everybody, I have a peg doll tutorial to share with you today. We are using this book by Margaret Bloom called Making Peg Dolls and More for inspiration and for different techniques. Today we're going to focus on drawing faces. Now I've got a couple of these supplies here for this peg doll, but today we're going to make faces using a variety of different mediums. The first thing we're going to use is a pencil, and I am going to just make sure that the grain of my peg doll is in a circular motion. Once you receive your peg dolls, you'll be able to tell what I'm talking about. And so when you draw your face, you just want to be on a symmetrical part of the peg doll. I'm going to be drawing the eyeballs quite far apart, and I learned this from the book by Margaret Bloom. I'm also going very easy on the lips, just a very tiny smile. I found that less is better because if you do more, it's really hard to undo it. Here's another technique. I'm using a Staedtler fine liner pen. This is 0.1. I'm going to go very easy on this because this is going to bleed through the wood grain, and if you go a little bit heavy on this, then it's going to make lines through the wood grain up and down. So you just want to make sure that it's just a very tiny little dot. I'm also going to be using a red Staedtler pen to make the lips, and again I'm going very easy on this. I noticed in the past that when I go back to add in a little bit more, it tends to look worse than just going very simple on it. Here's another technique. We're going to use some Lyra paints, and I'm just looking for a very thin paintbrush, and I found two that are going to work, but one is a little bit more stiff, which is going to be a little bit better for this. I'm going to wet it gently, and then I don't want my paintbrush to be too wet, so I'm going to put quite a bit of paint onto my paintbrush, and this is going to kind of make it a little bit drier because I haven't used this paint set in a while, so it's not really moist right now. And again, you will end up having the paint kind of spread through the wood grain if it is too wet. So you want to make sure that it's nice and dry, and that again you go really easy and light. Again, I'm doing the eyes fairly wide. This is just a technique that you can do. It gives for a more juvenile, kind of very soft looking face. The eyes closer together give it a different emotion, I suppose. And now I just want to come back in and do the lips, and I'm just using some red Lyra paint. And I make a mistake here. I am going to, my finger's going to slip, and I end up trying to rectify this, and it's a very small, almost like a V smile. I end up liking it the best, so don't worry about your mistakes. They may end up being good things. Now I want to show you one more technique. This is the fourth and final one, and that's just to use some acrylic paint, which won't bleed through your wood grain as much. And I'm just using the tip of my pencil for this. I'm just going to tap on very gently the paint onto the peg doll. As you can see, with that last little bit just was quite a lot, so I just stopped there. I'm not going to try to take it off, I'm not going to try to fix it. It's really hard to undo these kinds of mistakes. I've tried sanding down my peg dolls, and the only other solution is just to make your mistake the back of the head and paint over it or add some hair. I'm going to add a little bit of a lips here. It looks like she's not smiling, so I'm going to just try to curl up those lips a little bit on the sides and try to make her look a little bit more jolly and happy. Alright, so this is what the faces look like. 4 different techniques, from pen to pencil to 2 different kinds of paint. And don't forget, of course, that you do not need to draw faces on your peg dolls. You can always leave them blank. Now I'm going to do one more thing here, and I kind of make a mistake. I want to draw some little cheeks in, but I've used too much paint. I'm going to dab it off, but at this point it's still it's quite strong, and if you want to make cheeks, I would recommend making them a little bit softer. We're going to work on the hair right now, and I just want to measure off about how long I want her hair to be, and it's about 3 finger spans. So I'm just going to wrap that yarn around and then trim it off so I have a nice supply of long strands to do her hair. Now you can always paint on your hair, or you can just do a couple of strands of hair and then cover it with a little hat or a headband. But for this particular doll, I am going to just let her have long hair, no bangs. And when you're doing this, you want to be mindful of how the hair looks like at the very top of her head, because when you're using hot glue or really any kind of adhesive, you, number one, don't want the adhesive to show. You also want it to look as natural as possible. And at this point, it doesn't look natural at all. You can see that line of yarn in the back, as well as at the top you can kind of still see some glue and some of the peg doll. And then I want to work on her wings, which of course is optional. You could always leave her without wings. She looks just as good with and without them. And in fact, her hair is quite long, and so it's going to get in the way of her wings. But at this point, I am just cutting out 4 wings. But first, I want to paint her in this creamy white, but the cream was a little bit too creamy for her wings and for her hair, so I'm going to add some white to this. I'm going to kind of mix them together, and then I'm going to paint her. Now, generally, I would paint the doll before putting the hair on, so you just want to be really careful if you do it this way, just to keep her hair out of the paint, otherwise it will stick to the paint and you'll get little fibers in it. She's all dry now, and I can work on her wings, and I just want to make sure that the wings are in the correct position, and then I can go ahead and glue that in place using hot glue. It's my favorite adhesive to use when I'm doing peg dolls and finger puppets because it dries so quickly and it's very durable. They pretty much don't come apart. I've had some for about 10 years now, and my kids have been playing with them, and they really hold up very well. So there's how those double wings kind of come together, and that's why you need 4 of them. Of course, you can get the patterns for these wings by checking the description box below. Now, the last thing I want to do for her is give her a little crown. Kind of looks like a halo. I didn't intend for her to look like a snow angel, but at the end of it, she kind of does. And I'm just using some bling that you can find at the craft store, and I'm gluing it on. Even though it comes with adhesive, again, using a hot glue gun is the best bet if these are going to be played with by children. And that about rounds her out. She's got a beautiful little crown. Now, the cheeks were kind of prominent, so I would recommend that you make them a little bit softer if you want to go ahead and try those cheeks. And though her smile was a mistake at first, it is my favorite of all the faces that I made today. If you want to check out the other peg dolls in this series of tutorials, you can click on the screen.